Welcome to XYPN Radio, where your host Alan Moore brings you into a community of fee-only financial planners who want to profitably and successfully serve Gen X and Gen Y clients. If you're ready to get the knowledge you need from leaders in your field, learn from forward-thinking advisors, and take action on your own goals, XYPN Radio is the show for you. Here's your host.
Hello and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I am your host, Alan Moore, and I'm excited to have Steve Crawford, founder of the XY Academy in Australia, on the show today. Steve started his financial planning firm in 2008, right about the worst time to start a firm. He had been in the industry and felt like they just weren't serving the client base that he really wanted to focus on. He's been steadily growing his practice, and after bringing on a couple other advisors, has shifted his focus to providing a lot of cash flow planning services to clients and also training advisors how to provide this service. He will be hosting a workshop at the XYPN Live 2018 conference this September, helping to teach advisors how to fully integrate cash flow planning into their financial planning service offering. Ultimately, your client's savings rate is what will determine if they are successful in achieving their financial goals. So we talked a lot about how he operates this side of the business. Support for today's episode comes from Orion Advisor Services. Liberate yourself from the back office tedium, slowing your growth with Advisor's easy-to-use, easy-to-scale portfolio management technology platform. Supporting a range of performance reporting, fee billing, trading, compliance, and client experience needs, it's tech that works as hard for you as you do for your clients. Build a better business so you can build a better life with Orion Advisor. You can find any of the additional resources that we mentioned during the episode at xyplanningnetwork.com/167. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN Radio listeners. It's the community of advisors we've all been looking for that's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Without further ado, here's my interview with Steve. Hey, Steve, welcome to the show, man. Thanks so much for being on.
Thanks, mate. It's great to be here.
So you gave it away when you said, mate, it is very, very early in the morning for you. So I appreciate you being willing to get up and guzzle your coffee from Australia and be able to get on while I was, a reasonable hour for us. That there's not a lot of crossover in terms of time zone. So thank you for getting up early and braving this with me. Just for listeners' benefit, can you give me sort of an overview of you, who you are, where you're located, the type of business that you run, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. Yeah, so we're obviously an Australian-based financial planning practice. So we've got financial planning, mortgage broking, and then I do a little bit of financial planner coaching as well. So we're based in Melbourne, down here in not so sunny Australia this morning. We had a 40 or 50 kilometre an hour, up to 100 kilometre an hour winds gusting through with rain and stuff last night. So it was a little bit windy. But yeah, they're a smallish firm still. We've got 4 full-time staff. We're hiring our 5th at the moment. And I've got myself and 1 business partner. And yeah, that's us.
So talk to me about your sort of typical client. So it sounds like you have the three sections: financial planning, coaching, mortgage brokerage. So what's your typical client that you're working with in each of those 3 segments of the business?
Yeah. So when I say the coaching stuff, it is me coaching other financial advisors. And that was a deliberate play as well. So my typical client, our average client age is 37 and a half. I think it's 37.6 now because we track it to make sure that it stays
they
young
get
enough.
older every year.
I know, but we keep recruiting younger clients, which is great. Our average new client age is 31, and our oldest client client's 52. So we are, from day one, I started the practice in December 2008. So yeah, we started day one targeting Gen X and Gen Y clients. It was probably more Gen X to start with because of my age. I'm 40, and it was just me. But over time, we've evolved it into a Gen X, Gen Y practice, and we're starting to think about what we're going to do with the Gen Zs as well.
What was the term that you just used? Gen?
Oh, the Gen Zs. What do you call them? Next Gen?
Yeah, we don't know.
Gen Z?
I've heard Gen Z. I've heard post millennial. I've heard Gen. I don't know. No one really knows what they're going to be called. But I mean, they're in college now, so I mean, they're a relevant group. I don't know why we haven't named them yet. So.
Yeah, and that's part of the thing is we've always sort of, when we started, again, when I started the practice, and I came out of corporate finance in Australia, and when I started the practice, no one, they've got a terrible term down here. They call them accumulators, and I don't think it transfers to the US market because accumulator is actually literally linked to our superannuation, which is our forced retirement savings system, which I know most of your listeners would know, because I think in the US you guys would love to have our mandated 9.5% of your salary going into your retirement savings
Right.
every week or fortnight. But there's two phases of the superannuation. There's two components to the super phase. There's the accumulation phase where it's building, and then there's the retirement phase or the pension phase. And so the industry coined anybody south of 50 as an accumulator because that was the phase that they were in, and then it just stuck. So when we broke away, when I broke away from corporate and started, and started playing to some cool. Guys, that covers an age range of like 30 years. You really got it. Even Gen X and Gen Y, as you guys know, obviously, is really broad.
Yeah, it's over half the population of the U.S. Probably the same in Australia. It's way too big to actually serve and to call that the target market. So I guess, how have you narrowed your focus in the practice? Do you have a more specific target than just people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s?
Yes and no. So I mean, I'm a long time listener, first time show guest is what I wanted to drop with you guys. So I've been listening to you for ages, and it all started when we came out to San Diego and hang out with you guys a couple of years back. But and I know you've got your niche components, and sometimes when I listen to it, I go, I've got to remember that the Australian market is a lot smaller than the US. So you guys and girls can have niches that are very specific, but still have like millions of people in them. Whereas for us, if we went that specific, it'd be like two men and a dog hanging out in the corner. So we've sort of gone, okay, well, how niche can we get where there's still enough people that we can talk to, but it's still broad enough that it allows us to be good at what we do. So we do still have a Gen X, Gen Y focus. We're primarily dealing with professional families. So at least one of our mum or dad or mum and mum, at least one of them is in usually white collar executive work. And probably about 40% of our clients are either in financial services themselves or media are the two areas that we seem to have a very big base. But within the practice, what we've done is we've actually split. So because I'm 40, I look after, and Willow, Chris Williams, and I'm sorry, again, it's the Aussie thing. I said, you could put an O or an A or an E on the end of everybody's surname. You never actually call them what they are. So Chris Williams, aka Willow. Willow he's a pup, so he's like 31, 32. So I deal with all of our parents of school age kids. So that's my niche. And Willow deals with all of what we call our first timers, first time parents, first time property buyers, first time couples that are moving in together. And then between him and I, sometimes we look after our singles as well.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it is one of those things that, particularly in the marketplace, because my understanding is once Australia implemented some of the rules a few years ago, banning commissions and all that, the number of advisors there has really shrunk. And so there's just really not enough advisors to go around, which I understand makes it difficult to really put a stake in the ground around having a niche. I struggled with that when I worked for an advisor in South Dakota, where we were the only fee-only planner in the entire state. And we felt bad sending people away because we're like, no, we're going to be really focused on this one group. What about everybody else that doesn't have access to a planner because there's just no other ones here? Fortunately, that has evolved because now we can work virtually and that sort of thing. But it is tough when there's a massive shortage of planners doing it the right way.
Yeah, and you have, I mean, here as well, there's a resentment in the planner base to being told what to do. And so I think everybody knows the idea of niching around a client or picking, we call them ideal clients, picking an ideal client base and then working around that.
Sure.
And I think there's a lot of resentment of being told to do that because they're being told to do everything else. Like they've got all the regulation, all the legislation. And it's like, well, if I want to look after everybody, let me look after everybody. But literally in 2008, I did like the trio of things you don't do, the quadruple of things you don't do. One, I quit a relatively cushy job when I was on an upwards career path at a very big investment firm, being an investment insurance firm. Two, I did it 1 month after the GFC hit. Three, I targeted the two demographics that were untargetable in the Australian marketplace at the time because there was just nobody going after them. Because in 2008, the Australian financial planning system was so heavily anchored towards pre-retirement that you just didn't bother talking to anybody else because it was like shooting fish in a barrel for pre-retirees. And then the fourth thing I did was start from scratch, and everyone was just looking at me like, Crawford, you're drunk, mate. You just need to just stop. Like, what are you doing? Does your wife actually know that you're doing this stuff? And looking back now, and coming up for 10 years, hindsight's 2020, and I can say, oh yeah, it was a great decision because of the way things have played out from a legislative and a regulatory point of view here and a market point of view. But at the time, I'd be lying if I didn't say that I didn't think of doing some other things. And in fact, for probably the first 12 months of the practice, I also co-specialized in business succession and insurance advice, which was and that was me basically hedging my bets. And I think back now and I look at the practice and go, how the hell can you do a specialty? I specialize around parents of school age kids and help them make better decisions around their money. And in the afternoons, I moonlight as a business succession specialist. It's ludicrous, right? But it's what everybody,
Yeah.
you got to eat. So I understand it as well.
So you have I guess how many clients do you currently serve? I'm assuming you work with them on an ongoing basis. So I guess what's your sort of makeup of clients at this point?
Yeah, so we're still the number sounds really small, but we do have a different business strategy that we're going with. But I think across all of us, myself and Willow as the two planners, we're sitting at around about 80 households that we're looking after. So again, in 10 years, that I would literally be sitting there listening to this potty going, what are you doing? Like, why are you not getting bigger? But you're right when you said we look after them on an ongoing basis. And our whole value proposition, I sort of mentioned it before, is around helping our clients make smarter, more confident decisions around their money. So a lot of that's linked to the budgeting and the cash flow, personal family cash flow side of things. So our average client will see 4 times a year for quarterly progress meetings. We'll still do all of what we call traditional advice here, which is insurance advice, superannuation advice, and investment advice. But on a monthly basis, our clients are also getting monthly spending and savings reports, and then weekly they're also getting spending snapshots from us as well. So it's a more labor intensive, in theory, it's a more labor intensive relationship. It's definitely more high touch than a traditional financial planning model. And because of that, I think you probably can cap out on your value with how many households you can look after before you're not very good at it. So we very, very early on made a decision to keep the number of households that we look after per coach or per financial planner small. We think we can do it reasonably well up to 75 each, and diversify where we get our revenue from. So we do have mortgage broking services here, which is included as part of our offer as well, which we generate revenue on. Unfortunately, that is still in a commission model because we're pure fee on the financial planning side, and I'm happy to talk about that as well. But then my moonlighting gig, the one thing that I did when I was in corporate was I used to work with financial planners and around practice management, and that was the one thing that I missed when I left. So I do a lot of that now as well, working with other financial planners. So I'm trying to limit how many clients I've actually got. In fact, Willow and I are going through lists of my clients and seeing who is probably better suited to transition over to him. But yeah, that's how we're doing it.
So you have 4 full-time staff. You said you're going to 5. Does that include you and Willow?
Yeah, so we've got 2, myself, Chris, Willow, and then Brett is our banking and lending specialist. So he does all of our mortgage broking and all of our banking stuff. And then we've got Elaine, who, shout out, hey Elaine. Elaine works with us. She's based in the Philippines. So she's one of our offshore crew. And Elaine does all of our back office, all the grunt work on the budgeting and the cash flow stuff. I say grunt work, but for us, it's like the most important bit.
Right. It's keeping the wheels on the bus, as we like to say.
And because so much of our value proposition is anchored to the budgeting and the cash flow stuff that we just, you have to have an A grade. For us, we have to have an A grade component to that. And then we're hiring another person offshore as well at the moment to sit beside Elaine, and he or she will probably do more of your traditional financial planning administration stuff that Willow unintentionally has to take on over at the moment, because we had a team member transition out about 3 months ago. So he picked up all of the stuff that I didn't want to do.
So basically two going, we call them paraplanners. So you have two advisors or full-time advisors. Sounds like one sort of in that paraplanner role and basically two people really in operations.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing here, the paraplanning, because of the way we do because our advice is very heavily anchored towards the front end of the advice conversation. So goals-based planning, budgeting, cash flow stuff. Our advice proposition in terms of how do we think we're going to help you become financially independent, and the strategies that we deploy and the thinking that sits behind it. It's very, I don't want to, it's probably quite simplistic from what a financial planning mindset would be. But again, you're thinking the average age of the client's 37, right? And the average new age of our clients is 31. A lot of clients are someone else coined the term, and I think it was a lady on one of your shows. So hopefully you can remember who it is. She talked about high net growth as opposed to high net wealth or high net worth. And it was such a brilliant term that I've reused it. So if you can please find out who that is for me so I can reference her. But
I'm trying to remember if I've heard that before. So I'm not sure. I'm not remembering. But so high net growth, not high net worth.
Yeah. So she talked about people that have got really good earning capacity, but they don't have a lot of assets under management yet. And that is absolutely our client base. So our average client, family household, as a household, as a two-person household, and again, this is in Australian terms, you got to understand our inflation and property prices and stuff. It's just everybody's got to earn heaps of money to be able to afford to pay the mortgage. But so we're earning as a household somewhere between 150 and 200,000 a year. But when they come see us, their investable assets is like 30 to 50 grand. So like your value proposition, it just can't be linked to investment management, because even if you're a wizard at it, you're going to do 2/5 of stuff all impact. Like, so for us, we're really heavily anchored towards the front end. Let's help you manage your money and manage your spending and your savings. Here I can say manage your money. I know that doesn't really cross over there. So from a strategy point of view, like we're full passive investment. There's not a lot of maximization of tax and things like that you can do from a strategic point of view here, because the Aussie government, as much as we love them, have closed the bloody loophole. So there's not a lot that we can do. So it is literally earn money, spend money, put a system in place so you don't spend all of it, get your super sorted, get your insurances in place, rinse and repeat. So the paraplanning element of our system is quite minimal, which is probably good.
All right. So they can do a lot more potentially, and just with the implementation, that sort of thing, especially like you said, with your model. It's nerve-wracking to hand off a $5 million client that's a $50,000 revenue relationship to a newbie, but that's younger, not as credentialed. But it's a lot easier if they are doing more entry-level work for younger clients that don't necessarily have the assets or the revenue that are coming in. Like, it's a little easier to hand those clients over, and a nice way for them to cut their teeth and learn.
Well, especially when we don't have $50,000 clients as well. So one of the other and this is either one of the smartest things we've done, or added to the list of dumb shit that Steve's done, is we're a flat fee, like flat dollar fee. So it doesn't matter whether your net worth is, one of our wealthiest clients is worth north of sort of 25, 30 million. They pay the same monthly fee in dollars that our clients that have $50,000 do. So for us, and I think that helps, because you're right. Like if I had a 25 million client, that 25 million of assets came in and we were under a traditional asset management, here it's still 1%. That's what everybody seems to use as their go-to figure. Although there is continual pressure for those that are doing that to lower and lower that rate. But let's just say it's a traditional 1%, and you got that 20 million, that's a ridiculous amount of money and a ridiculous amount of pressure for a firm like us. But when it's, our average client fee ranges, our average client fee is around $400 a month at the top end, and $200 a month at the bottom end, or 150, then that everybody gets treated equally, and there's no one's more important or less important than the others. So I think that takes a little bit of the pressure off, especially with Willow, because he was younger when I brought him in. And I think that was one of the biggest fears I was starting to hand over, and more so that he didn't have the confidence in himself to go, I can do this. I don't need Steve sitting there beside me hand holding. But when everyone's paying the same money, I think that was the real tipping point for him, where he sort of clicked and went, well, they're all the same. They're just like everybody else. So I'm going to treat them equally, and that allows his confidence to go up.
That's a really interesting point about by leveling the revenue that's coming in per client, it makes it so that no client is intimidating. Because when we get intimidated, that's when we make mistakes. When we get fearful that, oh, well, if I say the wrong thing, then this, client may quit and then I'll be in trouble. Well, that's when you say the wrong thing because you're so nervous that you say nothing. So
yeah, and you had that's the other thing is, from a client point of view, everybody wants to feel like they're the most special, right? And I'm included in that. So I think having a model that it's a downside of that model, because from a client point of view, they know that they're exactly the same as everybody else. That if they are asking for special treatment and special services and outside of the box stuff, they're just not going to get it, because it's not what we can do. And it's not that we can't do it. It's that we very early on sort of made a belief or built our belief system around, here's how we help you become financially independent. Here's the rankings and the weighting that we're going to put on this. And 50% of the time with you, we're going to spend around helping you make better decisions around your spending and your savings, so that there's more money left over at the end of each month, consistently, not sort of like randomly, but month in, month out. And then we're going to coach you around how you're going to divvy up the money that's left over. How much is by default going to go into your asset growth strategy, and how much of it's going to go into your debt reduction strategy, and how much you're going to chuck aside for your spending, extra spending. And then the last bit we're going to do is around, and this is like the tiniest bit, is around where you're going to park your money. So which investments. And we tell our clients, like, less than 10% of our time and our value is going to be added by where that money ends up being invested. And 90% is going to be added by how much we can help you have left over at the end of each month, and helping you make better decisions around how you allocate that. And so somebody walking in, I had a few people here that called us, and we turned them away. They're like, we've got X million of investable assets, and we just want to know what you would do. What would the strategy be? And I tell them that story and go, and at the end of it, it's going to get parked in a bog standard passive index fund. And they go, well, that's not what we want. And I'm like, well, that's not what we believe in. So if you want that, that's fine. But yeah, because it's not that it actually is that we can't do it. So that would just, pretending that we knew what we were doing would be a lie. I worked at one of the biggest investment firms in Australia, managing billions and billions of assets. And I worked in the investment team there. And I just, we were sort of preached that active management was the way of the future, and that's what it was all about. But the more that I spent time in there, and the more I had the real data that sort of said, well, 75% of the time, passive outperforms active. And that's before you even get started on fees. I sort of went, well, even if that was right, and one, I don't believe it is. I believe passive outperforms active because you just leave it alone and let it do its thing. Even if we could do that, if you've got an average client that's got between $50,000 and $100,000, like how active do you need to be to make that thing work? It's just so counterproductive for younger clients with less assets, that we just went, well, where are we going to add the value? If they're earning really good money, but they're making terrible decisions around what they're earning and what they're spending, let's put our focus there, because that's just going to help them grow the pot faster.
Yeah, you definitely cannot gain in the market poor financial choices, right? So if we're making bad decisions, then it's not like you're going from beating the market by 1% or 2% or 10% is irrelevant if they're making poor financial choices and not saving money and blowing through what they have. So it absolutely circles back around. So you are able to manage the investments in Australia. So you are doing that in-house. You're doing it using passive investments, that sort of thing, but it's still sort of in-house.
Yeah, so we still have a investment philosophy. So I think, and the government and our regulators definitely want to make sure that we do that. And we've got our own financial services license here as well. So anyone from ASIC listening, don't worry, we're making sure we're doing all the right things. But when it comes to physically investing the money, no, it goes into one of the big, well, they're both American, one of the big American investment firms on a passive basis. And we basically run half the money in the Australian market, and the other half gets invested globally. So, but it's all done in-house through the Australian system and into the international dollars.
Okay, that makes sense. So you said one of the arms that you have is the mortgage brokerage, and you have somebody that focuses on that area. So how does that work? Are you writing loans for folks, and are mortgage loans? And if so, are you earning commissions on that, or is that a flat fee service you're able to provide in Australia?
No, so yes and yes. So yes, we're writing loans. Yes, it's a mortgage. It's a commission. Unfortunately for us, we're one of the few practices that would actually like it to go commission free. The problem is and this is a conflict that we have. I was actually speaking at a conference down here last week on how does the industry regain trust. And I said one of the things that we've got to do is we've got to have a conflicts of interest system and understand that the more conflicts we have in our system, the less trusted we're going to be. And we need to try and we need to actively avoid conflicts and identify what we've got, remove what we can, and then manage what's left. And one of the things that's left with us is commissions on mortgage broking. We just can't do it the other way yet because here the banks pay the commission inbuilt into the interest rate. So even if we didn't take the commission, it's loaded in and they won't remove it out. So for us, we're praying for the day that they actually strip it out, which would allow us to either charge a dollar fee, charge a percentage fee. We'll probably still go dollar because it aligns with our other side of the practice. But from a client point of view, I think this is one of the things that we're pretty proud of. Like our clients, if you asked our clients who does what, I think they'd probably say everybody does everything for us, but Chris does more of this and Steve does more of this and Brett does more of this, but we work together as a team. So from a client's point of view, what they're seeing is hopefully everybody pushing in the same direction or pulling in the same direction. But then Brett goes off and obviously does the loan fulfillment side of things. But it does sit hand in glove for us. We don't break it up as to two separate conversations and two separate stories because the Australian absolute love affair, ridiculously stupid love affair with property is central to everything from a wealth point of view. The average Australia is currently leading the world for we're either number one or number two for household debt to income ratio, something like 120 to 125%.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's drunk level bad. And there's a joke that there was a meme that went around on Insta and Facey over here of a cardboard box that was urine stained, and the joke was, and there's some people from Sydney who Melburnians love hanging crap on Sydney people because it's funny to start with. But the joke was, I just got a bargain at auction. Look at what I picked up, and it's like urine stained cardboard box sells for $1.2 million. And the reason why it should be scarily funny because it's almost that bad. There are some absolute dilapidated, crash shacks that are selling for millions and millions of dollars here, and the market's fueled it. So for us, and it's fueled by the average client. So for us, there's so much value for us to make sure that they don't overextend on their debt, and then make sure they structure it the right way and be able to afford the mortgage that they're about to take on. Because there's so many Aussies now that are just saying, if the bank says yes, well, heck, I'm just going to take the loan. It's like, dude, have you even thought through what it's going to look like when interest rates start to go up? Because they do go up, they don't just always go down. So yeah, it's a big piece for us.
So talk to me a little bit about at your firm, your marketing strategy and where you get clients. So, you have the 80 households, over the last 10 years, but it sounds like the business is ramping up and growing pretty steadily. So where are you finding, I guess, success in terms of getting new clients in the door?
Yeah, the marketing is a funny word because it's something that I personally have massively sucked at. So by default, I think our marketing play has always been internal, meaning like 98% of our clients have been referred by existing clients. So we've never done any facey advertising. We've never done any web or SEO. We just don't do anything yet. But this year is the year that we've sort of got a part-time marketing person that's going to help us with that. So as we live and breathe today, 98% of our clients have come from either existing clients, or we get referrals from another wonderful financial planner that deals with pre-retirees. And so she sends any of her kids, she calls them the kids, we call them the olds. We send our olds to her and she sends the kids to us. So marketing up until now has really been centered around the client referral process. So we've made sure that we've tried to nail that as much as possible, given that that's where our investment is. So we do incentivize our clients. We give them gift cards based on, and the values linked to how much the client signs up for with us, depending on which package they take up. We use standard packages as well, so we don't have variable pricing in any way, shape, or form. And so it's really easy for our clients to. I think that was one of the biggest things that drove the referrals. We had really high net promoter scores when we did surveys on our clients because of what we did for them. But then our referrals weren't growing. And again, our growth has really come in the last couple of years. And we noticed in the early years when the referrals weren't coming through as fast as we would have liked, we actually I went and asked our clients, I said, "Do you guys, yes, you like what we're doing, that's great. Do you refer other people?" And they said, "Yeah, sure we do." I said, "So do you know why they're not coming through?" And they went, "Well, so here's how it plays out. We're at a barbecue, or we're at a dinner, or we're at a bar, or I'm at work, and someone's talking about something that's doing their head in, and I know it's something that you guys have fixed for us. So then I say, you should go and talk to Steve, or you should go and talk to Chris. They got rid of that stuff for us." So to this point, it's really normal, right? And then at that stage, we had a tiered pricing model. So it was, well, it's X dollars if you look like this, but then there was a percentage on the insurance commission that was offset. And then depending on the complexity of your situation, it changes. And so our clients literally just turned around and said to us, as soon as they ask us, well, what does it cost? We go, well, it depends. And it's a little bit too hard for me to explain. So just call Steve and then he'll explain it. And that was like the end of the referral because the prospects just went, it's all too hard.
Right.
As soon as we went to flat fee, then it was really easy for our clients. And we also introduced a stepping stone. So our goal planning session meeting that we do with our clients is $220. So we introduced a lower entry point. So now all I've got to say is, look, it's the fees. There's a little bit of a range depending on what you want. The most you're going to be paying on an ongoing basis is like $300 or $400. But you can get started with a goal session with him and it's like $220. And so what we saw was that was when the referrals really started to ramp up and we're our busiest we've ever been at the moment, which is fantastic.
So switching gears a little bit, you've mentioned cash flow a couple of times. So that was actually, what sparked this conversation. So just so listeners are aware, Steve's going to be hosting a cash flow workshop at XYPN Live. On that first day, we have an afternoon session, 3 hours, going through your cash flow process and how you help clients manage cash flow to really put that into the center of the relationship and a super valuable service model that you're offering your clients. So talk to me about how is your firm different on that? And just talk me through your philosophy around cash flow planning and how you help your clients in that area.
Yeah, so I want to say that I knew cash flow was going to be huge and I called it early and I'm a legend, but that's garbage. Right? Day one, when I left the corporate job and I had to produce my first, we call them statements of advice, like the formal documentation thing that you have to sign your life away and that the client can sue you for if you make stuff up in. It's also the advice document, but part of that you need to put their income in, their assets, their liabilities, all your recommendations, but you also needed to put in what their expenses were. And every other figure I could validate. So this was 10 years ago, but I couldn't validate their expenses. And like a simple little one page, what do you spend money on? All our clients kept turning around going, no. What do you think I should write down here? And I'm like, well, that's not good. So at the start, I was literally saying, look, give me 3 months worth of your bank statements. I'll clean them up because I'm a bit of a numbers nerd. And they sent it through and initially it was all manual and I'd clean it up and put it into a little report and go, here's what you spent in the last 3 months. Here's your average savings. And like the running joke here is if you've got a statement of advice that's less than 100 pages, it's a quick read because of our wonderful, stupid system. And so out of the 100 pages, there'd be 98 pages of traditional financial planning stuff and 2 pages of my little cash flow report. And surprise, surprise, the clients would skip over the 98 pages of all the stuff they didn't give a crap about. And they'd look at the 2-page cash flow report and go, so we spent this much on this. This is really good. Can you send us more of these? And as a brand new planner, like obviously you just go, sure, I'll say yes to everything. You want me to do something that you like? Of course. So that became like bigger and bigger. And it was super, super manual at the start. There was no technology. Like all the data aggregation, account aggregation software just didn't exist back in 2008, even in really 5 years ago here. But in recent times, it's gotten more and more technology driven, which is fantastic. And we did, the reason why we do so much on this is we hired a consultant to come in and basically kick the tires of our firm and find out what was good and what was bad. And she asked all of our clients 3 questions, which I thought was brilliant. And they're still my favorite 3 questions. What was the reason that you came to experience wealth in the first place? Why do you pay them fees on a monthly basis? And why do you if you do refer other people into them, why do you do that? And it was like number 1, equal first was the cash flow stuff. And in their languages, they help us be better with our money. Number 2 is they then help us link our money to our goals. And then number 3 as an extension is they help us pay off our mortgage. So, and that was like across the board, exactly the same. Why they join us, why they pay our fees, why they refer us. To this day, like in 10 years, we've never got a referral for investment. We've never got a referral for superannuation. We've never got a referral for insurance, ever, in 10 years. All of them come from centers off that cash flow goals process and then the debt side. So the reason why I started getting into the coaching stuff, I said before, like I love the practice management element of my previous role, working with advisors. I love going and talking to advisors about what their challenges are, what their problems are, and what they're trying to do to fix them. And I think partly I've got a responsibility as being a bit of a trailblazer in the Gen X, Gen Y market here that's figured out how to do this stuff. And partly I got sick of being shouted free coffees because I literally get it. And at this conference last week down here, and I really liked the guy, so I said yes. Standing there at the buffet after my session, and he's like, "Oh, I haven't seen you for ages. Look, what you talked about was really good. Can I shout you a coffee?" And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, "Dude, I've had 5 coffees already today." So I decided to turn it into a program and start teaching other advisors how to do it, because for the first 6 years, like I was just making it up. We made some horrible mistakes, none that had financial consequences from a client point of view, but more horrible mistakes from a practice point of view. That like went down a path of automating things that we shouldn't automate, created all these fantastic reports that were like 14 pages long and 47 different graphical representations. And it took us months to build with a software provider. And then we're sitting in front of one of my clients and he goes, "Crawford, this thing looks really bloody pretty, but what the hell do I use it for?" You know? So part of the reason why I do the coaching stuff, apart from the fact that I love it, and yes, I absolutely want to teach other advisors how to be able to have those types of conversations with their clients like we do, because it does lead to better outcomes. The average Aussie saves less than 7 or 8% of their income a year, and our average client for the last 4 financial years in a row, coming up for 5, has saved north of 20%. So
wow, that's a big difference.
It is, and look, and that, I'd be lying if I didn't say that wasn't a part of why we're successful from a client acquisition, retention, and referral basis. If we had a cash flow program that just delivered benchmark or index level results, and we charged a fee for it, it's pretty hard to sell. But when it's delivering really good results, it's easy for people to refer. So that's a huge reason why I want to teach it, is because at the moment, cash flow coaching is the fastest growing segment of financial planning in Australia, because there's such a demand for it. So the biggest issue, though, is that the technology providers at the moment are giving them all the tools, and the advisors, they don't know how to use them with the client. So they're letting the technology dictate the way they have the conversation without actually having a client conversation at the front of it. And that's my job.
So talk to me about your process. I mean, is it more like the differentiation factor and what you're training advisors on? Is it more around how to have the conversation, or do you have sort of a specific unique theory or approach to budgeting and to cash flow management that really works for you?
It's a little bit of both, actually. And at the end of the day, it's got to fit into the system. The reason why we use technology now is you reach a tipping point, even with like 50 families, 50 households. If you had to do this thing manually, it'd blow up. You just give up. You just couldn't keep up with the time-consuming process of having to do this stuff. So So it's great that the technology's there, and you ultimately do need to make a decision about which technology partner you're going to use and then accept the pros and the cons of the limitations of what they got. But we sort of I say, look, guys, in the same way that there's like model portfolios and default structures, or how we use straw man as a term here. Do you use that there, where it's the starting structure and then you build it out?
Okay, yeah, not we use the term strawman, but for something else. So
okay, well, you can edit over the top of that with any words that I've used throughout the podcast. It doesn't make sense. But I basically say, guys, there's three components to a great personal cash flow program for your client, and then the technology comes after that. It's the budgeting exercise, it's their banking structures, and then it's the reporting, which is the feedback loop. So we basically say you need to get all three of those right, and then we give them a default way to do it, and then teach them how to make decisions around whether or not they're going to use the default way or whether they're going to tailor it. So from a budgeting point of view, it's about helping clients set a budget that is realistic, but also understanding what the psychology that comes behind budget setting is. Some people, it's your saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. If they don't believe that they actually want to have a budget or they need to have a budget, then it doesn't matter how good your program is, they're not coming on board for it. So you got to sort of help them. You got to have the structure, but then you got to help them walk through the journey of that. So there's three reasons why our average client saves double, triple what the average Aussie does. One, they've found their reason to save in the first place. So that's one of the things I teach is the coaches, how do you actually help them find a goal and attach to it that has a savings component, i.e. you need to hit a savings target to hit this goal. So that's the first thing. It's a reason to save. Kids are great at this. It's just somehow when we get into adulthood, we forget how to actually do it. My boys, they've got two separate bank accounts. I've got three boys, and they've got their spending account and then they've got their savings account. And it's so easy. I can talk to Lockie, my 7-year-old, and go, buddy, what are you saving up for at the moment? And everything for him is footy related, so football related. So he'll go, and he wants another football. I'm like, mate, you've got 7 already. Yeah, but there's this new one. That's what he wants, right? And so he's got his eye on that. He knows how much he's got to put in to save for it. He can see his money going into his pot, his little bank account, and it works. But yet when it comes to adults, we shy away from the conversation with them around, guys, what are you actually saving up for at the moment? So that's where it's got to start from a savings point of view.
So how often are you working with clients on their cash flow? Because you mentioned earlier how much you're charging. It's a reasonable amount, but not enough to be spending a couple hours a week with a client, and cash flow can be so time consuming. So what's your meeting structure when you're working with clients around cash flow?
Yeah, so this is where the technology is critical, because it gives the perception that you are doing everything individually, but behind the scenes, the technology is driving 80 to 90% of the workload. So for us, on a weekly basis, what happens, and once we get through the initial setup, and the initial setup is quite labor intensive. So we charge $995 for a money and mortgage management program, which is us helping the client set their budgets, set their bank account structures up so they know what's spendable dollars and what's not spendable dollars, how to use their cards, where their bills are going to get paid out of, all of that sort of stuff, and then set up their reporting templates, what they're going to get and how often they're going to get them. But then from an ongoing basis, once a week, what's happening is behind the scenes, Elaine, is all the transactions are going into the system, and the system's allocating somewhere between 80 and 90% of those transactions without us having to touch it. And that's because humans are robotic in the way that they spend money. They go to the same coffee shop, they get the same lunch from the same takeout place. All of that stuff happens automatically. So most of it can get picked up by the system. Our time is then spent around clarifying the remaining 10%. So we call it, spending Thursday or spending Wednesday. They know that once a week they log into the system and they leave their comments on the transactions that we don't know. And usually some clients are like too robotic, but on average it's between like 5 to 10 transactions per couple per week. And they just jump in, they leave their comments, And then on a Friday, they get a report that comes out from us. And some of the software that's here will automatically send that report out. So we don't even need to do anything. Some clients we joke with, and this is where a lot of the engagement comes. Like some of our clients we can code everything without them needing to give us any comments. So we actually send them an email on a Thursday saying, and there's one guy, I won't mention his name, but I give him shit all the time because I go, dude, this is seriously the 4th week in a row where we've known everything that you've done. You are so boring. Go and do something different. Go and do something random.
We are very
You are too predictable. I'm bored and I'm not even you. Go and do something. So you can play into it a little bit as well. On a monthly basis, then they're getting automated reports that go out of the system. The big time commitment comes on a quarterly basis. So for us, we have 3 options with our clients. We have 2 options from an ongoing fee point of view, what we call the virtual coach and then the personal financial coach. The virtual coach, the clients get reports from us, so quarterly progress reports, which is basically how have you gone for the last quarter, your year-to-date results, and the comparison back to their benchmark. And their benchmark is other people in our client base that look just like them. So our experience wealth average single client, average family, average couple. So from a quarterly basis, what they're getting is some of our clients have the options to get a live meeting with us, like a Zoom meeting. But some of our clients, one of our packages is where it's just video only. So the virtual, probably need to change the name of it because virtual sort of implies virtual meeting. But the virtual pack, all our clients get a video report. So we sort of say it's like their own personal nerds highlights package. The finance nerds. So we just get in there and it's mainly Willow that's doing this stuff, but he's actually producing them all at the moment. And they go for about 5 to 10 minutes and he'll literally jump up, do a screencast and go, hey, Bob and Sam, hope you guys are doing really well. Here's your results from the last quarter. And he'll go through and talk through the results and send them out. So, and then it's rinsed and repeated on a quarterly basis. So it can be quite time consuming if you don't have a structure to follow. But if you build a structure and then you only offer the level of service that your clients want as well, then you can actually, I think you in the same way as any other financial planning process. I mean, if you were doing investment management, you'd have a structure around whether you're constantly rebalancing the portfolio, whether you're doing it monthly, quarterly, things like that. It's the same with your spending program. You just think your way through it and you offer what your clients want.
So for advisors that are coming to the conference, going to be hosting a workshop talking specifically about this topic, what can they expect to learn, at the conference about cash flow? Like, what are you really going to be focusing on for that 3 hours?
Yeah, so normally I train this thing it's at least a full day on its own to get half decent at it. But in 3 hours, I'm going to do my best to basically, all the gold and none of the stuff, none of the garbage. So we're going to try and focus on the 3 hours of power. Really, I think the difference between the Aussie and the US market is at the moment, the perception of the value of a financial coach or a spending coach or a money coach or a cash flow coach, because you guys have got, Mint and you've got YNAB and you've got a bunch of other software, personal budgeting software that largely tries to do this without a financial planner in the front end. The first thing I'm going to try and teach them is how much value they can actually add as a coach. As I said, there's 3 reasons why our clients save more, double or triple what the average Aussie does, and therefore why they join us, pay our fees, and refer other people. 1, they have a reason to save. 2, they have a program that makes it really easy for them to be able to follow that. And a lot of that is actually linked to their banking structures, not the reporting software. If you have a terrible banking structure with your clients, and Alan, you know this from when you were doing it, and even now, like if all the clients do is all the money goes into one bucket and then they use a credit card to spend everything, like good luck. At the end of the month or at the end of the quarter, your fancy reporting system, all Mint's going to be showing them is how crap they're going. So you need a good banking structure. And then the third part is the value of the coach. And the coach, like any good sporting coach, sometimes it's about technique. So actually teaching the clients the right way to go about their spending and their savings and their structuring. Sometimes it's motivational. You might have had a bad month or they might have had a bad quarter, and it's how to actually give them a pep talk. And sometimes in Australia, I don't know, I don't know if it transfers. It's called a spray here, where a coach lines them up and just gives them an absolute rocket because they're just not doing what they're meant to be doing. Now, by no means do I ever actually attest to abusing my clients verbally at any of our quarterly meetings, but like these people are paying you to help them be their best financial version of themselves. And if they're doing all the wrong things, if they're lying to themselves, if they're lying to each other, if they're spending the wrong way, if they're using their credit card when they promised that they wouldn't, and you just get to your quarterly progress meeting and you just pretend that it hasn't happened because you're scared that the client might get mad at you and leave, then you're not doing the right thing. So I'm going to teach in the 3 hours, I'm going to teach them, one, the value of having a financial coach. So they actually believe that them doing it instead of just letting the clients use Mint or YNAB is a really valuable thing for them. And then once they believe that that's going to be a huge driver or a big driver of value for them, then I'll go through the process. How do you help your client set up a budget? Using the technology as a tool to be able to do that. And I know you guys have got some systems as well that we're going to try and use instead of trying to reinvent the wheel. How to set up a banking structure that makes it really easy for your clients to see what's spendable dollars and what's not, and then how to choose what your reporting feedback loop looks like, and then talking through some of the elements around what their pricing model might look like and how they could package it up.
Fantastic. Well, I'm excited for it because I know this is an area where, again, we have a lot of advisors that want to be doing more cash flow planning. No one wants to start from scratch and recreate the wheel that's already been created by so many others. But it's just not something that's taught in our financial planning programs. Cash flow, debt management, how to actually handle loans and, banking structure. Those are not conversations that we have, much less even talking about how to have tough conversations with clients about their spending and that sort of thing. So I'm excited. So for anybody that's going to be at the conference, definitely take a look at the agenda and see if you can swing Monday afternoon. It'll be over sort of 2 sessions there in the afternoon after our keynote presentation, but definitely check it out. Well, Steve, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show and share your story and some of the work that you're doing. It's always interesting to hear, what folks are facing in other countries when it comes to financial planning. It's easy to get kind of focused on just the US, obviously, because that's where we're at. But recognizing that what's going on in other countries will have an influence on us, whether it be bringing new technology, new ideas, or new regulations, or lacking, or less regulation, depending. Because, I'm certain the U.S. regulators are watching what's happening in other countries to see if it's working and if it's providing the consumer protections they expect and that sort of thing. And it's been awesome to see some of the work that Australia has done to be a leader in that area. So thank you again for taking the time to come on the show.
Well, mate, one, thanks for having me on the show. And two, thanks for giving me the opportunity to spend 3 hours with those of you that are going to join us at the conference. I promise I'm going to bring out some Aussie stuff. So there's these biscuits over here, cookies you call them, called Tim Tams. That it's like a chocolate biscuit coated in chocolate with like a chocolate cream in the middle. Apparently, you guys go nuts for those. So I got a box full of them.
You're just playing into the American stereotypes right now.
Yeah,
we love chocolate cookies.
People, I'm going to bring like little packets of Vegemite, like out that black tar type stuff that is always hilarious. I'm going to see if some of you guys are going to be bold enough to eat that as well. I'll bring that over. But it's also been great. I've got my own podcast now talking to other advisors, and I had Michael on the show, and that's amazing. And you promised Alan to be on the show as well later in the year, once your eyes are open far enough from Bubs number 2 that you can stay awake for it. But most of my conversations have been around the impact of regulation and legislative change and all of that stuff. So it's been really good to get back to talking about clients and what they want and your practice stuff. Because as much as the Aussie market is leading in certain ways, a lot of it's being forced upon us. And I think a lot of planners, especially down under, pretty down in the dumps at the moment, thinking like the whole world's against us. So it's really good and to have a positive conversation and focus on the client and what we're doing. So thanks for having me on, buddy.
Absolutely. Thank you. Support for today's episode comes to you from Orion Advisor Services. Simplify the complexities of running an advisory business with the industry's most integrated portfolio management technology platform, built to reflect your needs, customized to achieve your goals, and delivered with the support you need to be successful. Get back to the business of serving your clients with technology that works for you. Learn more at orionadvisor.com. Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes with myself and Kitsis, and to finally find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You're not alone, and you're not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm. And that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.